Welcome to episode 2 of Drop the Act. You came back. Thank you very much. I'm your host, Chris Key, and today I'm chatting to Amy Merricks, who is the head coach of women's championship side Birmingham City Football Club. Now, I sat down with Amy Merricks last June, actually on the day that England were playing Denmark in the Euros, so you'll shortly hear her results prediction for that match. At this point, she was beginning her tenure as head coach at Birmingham City, and it was during pre-season, and there was a lot of pressure on Amy to return Birmingham City back to the top flight where they've not been for 3 seasons. Well, I'm pleased to say that at the time of this podcast going out, Birmingham City are top of the championship and banging on the door for a return to the top flight. So it's really interesting now to listen back on Amy's leadership style ideas, on her philosophy, on her use of communication, and see how that has helped propel Birmingham City up the table to their current position. Amy has held positions at England under-19 ladies, at Brighton with Hope Powell, and as well as having great tactical knowledge, she also is very keen to change the perception of women within what is very much a male-dominated sport. It's a really interesting chat that I hope you enjoy. Now, as always, can I ask you please to like, to subscribe, to rate, to follow, to do all those things that I need you to do to make sure we can keep the high standard of the guests on this podcast. Right, without further ado, I think it's time to drop the act and hear from Amy Merricks. Hope you enjoy. Good afternoon, Amy. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Actually, we're recording this on the day of England's second game of the Euros. So when this goes out, we'll know exactly how England have done. But I'm going to throw you right under the bus at the beginning and ask for your prediction for tonight's match against Denmark, and then we can listen back in a few weeks' time and see whether you were right or wrong. What are your thoughts so far?
No pressure then. I think we'll step it up this afternoon, actually. I'm looking forward to it. I think we'll come to life. I think the first game is always quite cagey in tournament football. I think that's what we saw. But I can see it clicking more tonight, and I think it'll be exciting, actually. But Denmark are a good side.
They are indeed. You going to give me a score prediction, or?
I'm going to go 2-1 England.
2-1 England. Okay, well, we will look back in a few weeks' time and we'll see whether you were right or wrong. Amy, currently managing Birmingham City ladies. I'll get to how we met each other in a little while, but I'd love just to know just a little bit about your background and your journey within football from a young girl and playing, and your dreams and aspirations, and what sort of took you on that journey, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, I think if I go right back, I have 2 older brothers. So I spent a significant amount of time in the garden with them playing football, completely engrossed in the game. If I wasn't playing with them, I was playing with friends out on the streets and whatnot. Decided to join teams. My parents aren't huge football fans, so my dad, bless him, managed to dig out some local teams, went to them, and it grew from there, really. I never played at the highest level, so I played for the likes of Millwall, Crystal Palace, Gillingham. And then I guess I quickly realised, or maybe I was quite critical of myself, to go, I don't think I'm going to make the top of the game here. At that point, unless you played for Arsenal and Chelsea, we were paying to play. And I thought, you know what, I started to get a taste of coaching and thought I'm going to go down this route instead. So I was introduced to coaching at college when I was playing as part of one of the courses and loved it straight away. Coached in America for 2 years on some camps, and then came back and had a role with Millwall, did some work with Chelsea Foundation Boys at the same time, lots of after-school clubs, and then fell into my first full-time role as a coach with Brighton, which was now, if I look back, it's probably about 11 years ago now. So that was really exciting, but that started as a dual role with 3 different teams, under 13s, reserves head coach, and a college team to try and make it a full-time package. So I guess a bit of a different journey, loved coaching and just threw myself into it as soon as I could, really, Chris.
I mean, there's many people who are listening would probably say, well, I'd say playing for Crystal Palace and Millwall, they're still big clubs and still great to be playing. But it's really interesting you saying, paying to play. And how things have changed, how times have moved on. And I imagine when you were playing as a youngster, were you playing with boys as well? How many girls' teams were there around at that time?
To be honest, when I moved into club football, I was around, I want to say maybe 12, 13 years old. And that's when I first found a girls team,
Right.
solely girls. Before that, I would go with my brothers and join in with their Cubs football team, or even with their mates down the park when they played the 11v11. So in terms of organised football, I had limited exposure to that at a young age. And I think that was probably down to the growth of the women's game at that time. Like you said, there wasn't a lot out there, and it was tough to find even just the local grassroots teams.
And then, so then moving into coaching, obviously we know this to have been certainly a male-dominated sport. Did you find there were obstacles in your way? Do you find moments where you didn't feel you were being taken as seriously as you wanted to? I'd love to know sort of how resilience came into your journey, and how you had to sort of dig in, and how you found that whole route.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that also leans into probably my childhood and upbringing. I get along with my brothers great, but they never made anything easy for me. So I think about back then in terms of, I was shoved in goal, or I was never given the ball back. I had to fight my way to win the ball back. Whereas now, and even through my coaching career, we've always been the minority. I've always been the minority in situations. And a part of you learns to embrace it. But it can be quite challenging, and you have to throw yourself into it. And I've always felt like, and I know a lot of females do in this industry, in coaching and leadership, we do feel like we have to prove ourselves. That is the reality of it. So I'm a lot of the sense of, and the opinion of, the sooner you can get me on the grass and I can demonstrate what I can bring, then I think that adds certainly to the case. But yeah, it's something that I've had to navigate on, not just in my career and my day-to-day job, but also on the courses, and through that pathway too.
And did you were saying, from the nature of your upbringing, you felt you had that resilience already? You were ready for that fight, or did you find there were moments where you really had to sort of look at your approach and how you tackled these challenges?
I would say I've always been very driven. My dad actually at my wedding brought up a story about how I moved from a bike with stabilizers within an hour onto a bike with no stabilizers, because I was just completely determined that I didn't want to be the odd one out. I wanted to do what my brothers were doing, 2-3 years older than me already. And I was always of the opinion, why can't I do that? And I think I still hold that somewhat now, which brings with it challenges, because I want to move quickly, but that isn't life. I appreciate you have to earn the right. So I think it's part of probably my character as well, but as well how my parents have let me, well, we'll have a go then, go and fail. And, if that's what you want to do, Amy, we'll support you, and to try and reflect on that and build from that.
I mean, I think it's interesting because we're sport in particular, but we're made aware in the headlines of how sometimes people are discussing women in the game, and coaches, but also commentators, TV presenters, that still there is that outdated impression that it's a male game. And I'm glad that things are changing, but it seems to be something that is a stumbling block in some areas. But then not just your profession as well. I suppose I was looking this morning, seeing that the leaders debate that's on TV tonight, which is for men, and so I think there's work to do in a lot of areas, not just in sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to what you're saying there, the visibility, the access. Certainly when I decided I wanted to go down this route in terms of a career, there, for me, in terms of seeing female leaders, there wasn't many at all. There wasn't an Emma Hayes that had won numerous WSL trophies. My mum was like, well, I have no idea how you think you are going to create a career in the game. It's just men.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? I have some great male allies as well, which support me and have opened numerous doors for me throughout my pathway. But I think part of the issue, like what you're saying there, is the lack of opportunity for females to step into positions. And even within the women's football world, where we're only just moving from a position of our pathways in the youth environment have been very much part-time or a few nights a week. So that straight away impacts the opportunities that there are for female coaches to step into a full-time role. So then people decide to take other routes, such as teaching or other career routes, because at the end of the day, people have lives and have mortgages to pay. So I think that is certainly changing that now. And I think with that, we will see more qualified, upskilled female coaches dominating the game, but it will take years and years.
And I think when we first met, you were at Brighton. So we met a couple of years ago, I believe, and you were an assistant manager at Brighton, or a player coach. I can't remember exactly what your role at that point.
Assistant manager.
And obviously your journey from there, assistant manager, and then managing with the England under-19s, and now at Birmingham. What have you learned along the way that's really now holding you in great stead for this challenge with Birmingham?
Oh gosh, tons, if I'm really honest. When I look at Brighton in particular, because that has played a huge part in my career to date, because I was there for 8 years. We moved from a semi-professional setup with just 3 full-time members of staff, one of those being me, into, by the time I'd left at the end of that 8 years, a completely full-time setup. Then at the top of the game, WSL, established in WSL, with, I think as I left, there was about 25 to 30 members of full-time staff just in the women and girls department. So the growth and playing a part in building that was huge. So I guess I have experience in knowing what it takes to get to WSL, and not only that, but in terms of creating sustainability for success, which is certainly the journey that we need to go on now at Birmingham City to take us back there. So that played a huge part in my development. England was a different experience, because we talk about club versus international football, and I'm really pleased that I was able to have that opportunity and exposure. I feel privileged for it. She worked with the most talented players in the country at that age group. Completely different in terms of you only have the players for maybe 10 days. And in that 10 days, your communication and what you want them to remember or instill is absolutely critical. Every word you say, it's got to be completely to the point, it's got to land, and it's got to stick. So lots of different, from building semi-pro, full-time, internationally, working with some top players. But if you said to me, what has been your biggest learning experience lately, it will be the interim periods probably at Brighton. So we had, in the space of 8 months, I think, 2 managerial changes where I went from assistant manager to manager for a short period of time. And that is a completely different navigation in terms of dealing with people in very emotional times, lots of change. At the time, we're fighting relegation. So how do we make the team perform? How do we stay in the league? So I learned an incredible amount in those moments as well.
And I mean, you've touched on a couple of things there that I'd love to pick up on, but just before I do, when you hear you're coaching for England, it sounds like that's the dream come true. That's the pinnacle to be managing at international level. But what was it, the draw about, the pull from Birmingham City that said to you, do you know what, this is a challenge I want to take on?
Yeah, there was certainly in between. I was at England. I was absolutely loving it. The players, the staff were fantastic. The resource that the FA has, the people in the building, incredible. And I learned an awful lot, even in my short tenure. I think the change from going 8 years in domestic football to international football is completely different. It is a big change. I recognised quite quickly that at this point in my career, I think I want to be working with and on the grass every day for me to continue my development as well. But they offer completely 2 different things. A huge privilege. The role at Birmingham now that I'm in, we have such a significant amount of opportunity to not only take the club back where it used to be, but to really create something that the fans can feel passionate and connected to. It's an incredible city. The people are amazing that I've met already, and everyone is so passionate about seeing the team do well, seeing people develop, seeing people thrive. So the opportunity to play a part in that and driving it forward with so much history behind us, I think that opportunity is huge.
And Birmingham was one of the sort of the founders, weren't they, in the Super League? One of the first teams there, is that right?
Yeah, incredible history. We've had a significant part to play in Champions League historically, as well as the top of the WSL. We won the FA Cup in 2012. So yeah, there's no doubt that this club should be at the top of the game, and that's what we're striving for. My job now is to make sure that we don't cut corners to get there, so that when we get there, we can stay there. And we have the base to build on, the foundations in place for sustainability.
I mean, I'm torn here because I'm a West Brom fan, so this is difficult for me. But at the same time, I want you to do well, Amy. So yeah, I'm wishing you all the best, of course. Let's go back to where we met, because I'm fortunate enough with Performing Perfectly to have had a fair bit of time within the football world, working with a number of teams, and also within the FA and the England setup. And it was through the UEFA Pro license, which is where I met you. And one of the reasons I was really keen on you to join the podcast was because after our session, you sort of immediately saw the similarities. You saw the links that you can make between performance, between theatre and business, and that's what we're all about in our effective communication. And you carried on, obviously, your dissertation for your pro license. We had some conversations, and you looked at particularly the role of understudies and being ready to step up and play. So I thought it'd be really interesting to chat with you today. And I mean, I'd love you to elaborate on that a little bit before we sort of get into the communication and your style. But what was it about that day that made you? Was there something that clicked there, a little switch that you went, hang on a minute, I can run with this?
Yeah, a few things. I think when I go back to being in school, I actually took drama for GCSE and loved it. So I enjoy going to the theatre. I've always had a love of musical arts and really enjoyed it. I think the things that you spoke about, certainly when you came on the course, about the language, the body language, the communication, and how much we pay attention to as humans, really hammered home to me. I was like, right, okay, there's similarities here. And then as you touched on there, the study, I was looking at, right, we have two similar situations. You guys have a cast and we have a squad. And within those situations, you have people who are key players, starters for us. But then we rely on a lot of people to be ready to come up and perform as and when required at any moment. There's obviously big differences in the research that I found that we spoke about, Chris, where your understudies are contracted as understudies, or we don't. We could really fluctuate. We could go 3 months with, I don't know, a forward being the absolute starter all the time, and then they completely drop out of it because there's a new sign-in. But what really, I guess, I looked at, how do we keep those people motivated? How do we make them feel connected? What is it? Why do you want to be motivated to perform if you're an understudy or a substitute? And there was certainly a gap in the WSL performance data. There was I looked at all the squads across the season, and I looked at the impact of substitutes when they came on, and whether the team then went on to win, draw or lose, or maintain result, for example. So maintaining result could be a really good outcome if you're already winning. That's the substitute doing their role. And what I found was there was two teams, right? Really, Manchester City and Manchester United. Manchester City arguably gained Champions League status from the impact of their substitutes. Whereas Manchester United in that season, the impact of their substitutes, actually, they lost more points from that moment. So the outcome was, well, if we know that going into a season, that we could get Champions League or not based on what we're doing to substitutes, then surely we'd invest more time in making sure they are ready. And certainly, I think in football, we can be guilty of spending a lot of time with the starting 11 and leaving behind those that maybe do not start or play all of the time. And that has, as you know, a significant impact on the culture, the environment, and all those elements, and most importantly, individual development.
So now, as a leader, as the head coach manager of that team? What's your leadership style? How do you do that? You just mentioned about how do we inspire? How do we get people ready to play, ready when we need them? What's your approach been?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll dive into the study a little bit, because I think it helps, I guess, highlight what I've found and what I feel are really critical. One of the first bits, and you put me in touch with the director, Sam Hillier, from Les Mis, and I was fortunate to go and watch them rehearse during the day, which was incredible, and speak to them and some of the understudies. And he spoke about, firstly, the recruitment of the understudy. And he spoke about, I think they had 6 interviews for one understudy, and how many different people played a part in being in that interview, what they asked that understudy to do. And I think in football, what we do is we have a conversation with recruiting a player. We do all the talking because we're selling come to us. But actually, how do we know they are the right character to step foot into the environment? But also, what environment do I want to create? And then how do they fit? So for me, it's about, we want individuals here that are on this continuous pursuit of excellence. They always want to learn. They're hungry to learn. But then once you've got that first bit, environment, you've recruited them, and then it's about how do we keep them engaged, like you said. For me, a large part of it is connecting first and foremost. So on an individual basis, but also, what does it mean for me to be a part of this group? And what is this group about? How do I engage with them? And what does it mean for our city? What does it mean for our fans? I think that's first, that piece around the group dynamics, where I fit and where the group fits. And I don't think we as leaders can impose that on a group. Well, certainly that's not what I believe in. Certainly part of my philosophy is about collaborating and empowering others to have a voice. So I think the players really should have an opinion on what are we striving for and what does it mean for us and how are we going to hold each other to account, etc., etc., etc. So that connection piece is critical. The other elements that I think also came out in the study was around communication and clarity. And I've heard this a lot from, and it's interesting because I think players sometimes as well, they're like, yeah, I want to know, just tell me, be honest with me. And then you say it and it's, but I think certainly that's what I try to do, is be as clear and as concise. And sometimes that means less is more. And certainly for those players that maybe aren't starters, well, they need to know what they're working towards to try and become a starter. And if they don't know that, how are they going to be motivated? How are they going to know that it's going to develop them or bring more opportunity? So obviously the way you tailor that is important. The final piece, the last piece, was the autonomy piece. And it was actually something the understudy said when I was interviewing him at Les Mis, Ben. And it was actually brilliant because he'd played the lead role the night before.
Yeah.
But then the leading actor came back in the next day, and that day he was back in the ensemble. So it was fascinating because he was speaking fresh and he was saying, director said I did really well, but now I've got to switch my mindset and be back here. So I was digging a bit. So why, what empowered you last night to be able to play that role with such enthusiasm and intent? And he was talking about how, actually, what he loves about Les Mis and directors is it's not, you need to fit that, I think it was Rob, you need to fit Rob and how he plays that role. He was given, this is the role, but bring yourself. We've already recruited you because of what you bring. And that autonomy for him to be able to tweak things and do it how he likes. He felt empowered and therefore was, I believe, more infused to, play the role well.
Yeah, I mean,
loads of elements.
Obviously, I direct Les Mis around the world, and it's a show that's celebrating its 40th anniversary next year, and 40 years of people standing on that stage playing that role. And when you're bringing someone new into the company, the last thing you want to do be saying, right, this is what you do it like this person who did it before, this is where you stand, this is what you do. So it's allowing that them to explore and create, but within that there's still guidelines that are set from where the lights are, the set design, the original director's work. It's not a simple case of, well, do what you like, but it's a case of encouraging them to create and have some freedom within that. So you find sometimes there's a skill in I don't want to use the word manipulating, but allowing people that freedom, but to stay within the pattern, the formation, or the playing style that you want.
Yeah, 100%, and that's the balance, isn't it? It's the skill of going, this is the individual strengths, but also this is the way we want to play, and these are the principles that we want to achieve. And I think that's a real balance. But having been a player myself, if I don't feel like I can express the qualities that I have, or I have the opportunity to, I very quickly switched off, Chris. I was like, yeah, like I want to do well for the team, but also I know that my biggest strength is X. How can I fit that in? So it's very much a balance, and especially in our world, I mean, we not only do we have the way we want to play, but we also have a strategy that we want to achieve when we play against opposition. So it's got to fit. And I think that's where it comes back to the clarity, the communication, letting the player have a voice. Do they see it as well? What do they see? And I think the more we can open that door, the better.
And it was actually through football that I first realised that the merit of performing perfectly of this world of theatre and the world of business, because it's not just for sports teams. It's how do you create that ensemble? How do you create that team, that squad, and how do you encourage and inspire, but also get them to feel like they have ownership and belong. So I think it's it's relevant across all sorts of industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the more I kind of delved into it with yourself and the other actors and directors, I became a bit more curious about, well, what are other industries doing? And as you touched on there with the pro license, we were fortunate enough that everyone presented back to each other, and everyone had gone off to different organisations or industries, and it's amazing how much overlaps. I certainly provided huge value to my philosophy as a head coach, and I think it will continue to do so.
And we're talking about your sort of leadership style here, and you were just very, very clear on what your approach was. It's interesting because of football days gone by, you hear about the Sir Alex hairdryer treatment, or even the other night, and I don't know Steve Clarke at all, but his comment was, how do you come back from this game? Well, you kick some up the backside and you put an arm around other. There's still that sort of tough love sometimes that's seen as necessary. How do you handle different individuals in different moments? Maybe let's take the highs and the lows. Somebody who's not had that good game, someone who is struggling. What's your approach in that situation?
Yeah, I don't think you can, first of all, tailor it unless you know them well enough. So that's the first step. I myself have made plenty of mistakes in the past where I've gone diving in and thought this is the best way to do it, and my word, it has not landed. And I think it's trial and error, but it's also how much time are you willing to invest with trying to understand the person beforehand. And the difficulty is when you're a head coach or in any leadership role, you've got to try and help someone feel comfortable letting down their guard a bit. That's the first step. And then you can start to tailor around, okay, well, I know talking to her directly after a game isn't going to work. So what's the next best point? Or is it me? Is it someone else? Is it, at what moment? Is it in a group setting? Is it not? I certainly think we've moved away from just do this. The players that we work with now, nor do I agree with it, but they don't just want to be told do this. They want to know why, what's in it for them, what's the impact on the team. And certainly with females, actually, there's very much a difference, I think, in terms of we want to know why we're doing something, and then we will become more, engaged and invested in doing it. Whereas I think sometimes working with males, like we want to have a go at it first, and then afterwards assess how it was. I'm quite limited in working with males, but certainly with females, that tends to be how it is.
So this sort of the emotional intelligence around the job sounds like it's so important, and that man management and really analysing and being aware of the needs of your team.
Yeah, consistently. I think some of the best advice I've received is, I remember having a conversation with Paul Barber, just a passing conversation, who is CEO at Brighton Football Club, and he said to me, you know what, Amy, and it's really stuck with me, every single decision you make is going to impact someone in some way, because there is a ripple effect. And I think that comes into the emotional intelligence piece as well, around what's the impact on the individual, what's the impact on the team, at what moment, what could the unfolding emotions be. I think we have to consistently check ourselves, reflect on how we're dealing with situations, but it's challenging, you know, Chris. How do you know you're doing it in the right way? And I think that then comes down to your staff around you and the ability for people to be able to be open with you, which takes a lot of time and trust.
And did you bring a team with you to Birmingham, the people you trust, or have you had to sort of work with a team that was already there, or is it a bit of both?
There's a lot of great people already here, actually, very skilled, very passionate people that want to improve and want to make sure that the club move in the right direction. So there's some excellent people here. There's also some people I've worked with previously. So Emily Simpkins is here as an assistant coach, and she assisted me at England under-19s. But she also played for me and Hope when we were at Brighton. So it's quite a nice story in terms of where she fits, and her values certainly align with my personal values. There's obviously Hope here as technical director, who I assisted. So although our roles are different now, it helps having that. I guess we've done it before. We know where each other sit and where we see the game and where we want it to go.
People you trust, people you can bounce off, and people whose opinion matters to you, I suppose.
Yeah, and you know what? Most importantly as well, there's people here that understand the environment and the club. And I think, you know, there's a balance in football. We see a lot of change now where a coach goes in and takes 10 people with them. But actually, how do you then have information around the players, the club, and what it needs? We have to be careful and make sure we deal with every situation in a unique way that it is. You know, Birmingham City is unique. I couldn't come into this role and do what I did at England.
Yeah, it's
not going to work. So we have to appreciate that and appreciate the good people that are already in the building.
And just going back to when we met and we looked at sort of performance and the roles that we play, you know, and we made the point of sort of linking theatre, and everyone has their role, has their character, has their script that's given for them. But in your case, you've been given your role, you're head coach of Birmingham City. Do you find there's different sorts of authentic versions of yourself that you need to step into in different environments to get the results you need?
Yes, I think. Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that as well? Sorry to interrupt. You know, do you feel sometimes I need to play a part to get this result that I want?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because I think I've really been steered towards throughout my development to just try and be myself as much as possible, because I think the moment that you try and play as someone else, you'll get absolutely found out. You've got to be authentic, especially in this role. And I would encourage everyone in the backroom staff, just be yourself first and foremost. When it comes to the performance piece, it's interesting because I think it's more about at what moments do I really need to influence a certain reaction, and how do I achieve that? Is it in the way that I present? So we do a lot of, you know, ties into the performing arts. We do a lot of presenting to the team. That is effectively we're performing, aren't we? You know, if I come in and I'm droned out and I might be doing that for effect. So it's more, what is the desired outcome that I want to achieve? Do I want urgency? How am I going to create that? And it's the same on the grass in the training sessions, but I certainly wouldn't deviate from who I am.
No, and we would always encourage everyone to be authentic, but just acknowledge that there's various different versions of yourself. How you might speak to a partner is very different to how you might speak to the chairman or the owner or whatever it might be. So, but it's still you. It's still a version of you. So I suppose I'm just saying, do you step into different versions of yourself in different scenarios to get the results that you're after?
Yeah, I think you need to, don't you? I couldn't approach, I guess, speaking to the board in the same context that I would with the players and the team. You have to put on your different hat in terms of what is needed in that moment. So yeah, absolutely. And that takes a lot of preparation.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you talk about preparation. I mean, how much? When you're putting together a team talk, when you're putting together a presentation, which is going to be about the opposition or about the training or whatever it might be. I mean, how much do you think about the way you're going to communicate, the way you're going to present yourself, the way you're going to perform, the language you're going to use? Does all of that come into it, or is it? Do you have a style that you're comfortable? I know what this is. I don't need to think too much into that detail.
Yeah, I'm probably too obsessed with it, to be honest with you, Chris. I'm very much like, I believe in the preparation and being diligent to the point where it's probably, just go and do it sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. Communication style, the language we use is critical, because if I'm saying these words, but Emily is using these words, the players aren't going to remember it. But it's about using things like the sticky language as well, that really sets the scene for the technical and the tactical detail. So I absolutely think that's the part of teaching and coaching that we have to really lean into, certainly at this level, because we don't have much time. You're constantly preparing and moving.
Yeah. So
the language piece, certainly I spend a lot of time thinking about how that aligns with the principles and how that's going to land. And for different players of different ages and abilities as well, because we have some new in their career and we have some been in their career for a long, long time.
And how do you motivate a team when you're faced with exactly as you just said, people who've been there a while and maybe are, I don't want to say comfortable, but certainly feel safe in their surroundings, and someone who's young and new and desperate and keen, and you've got to keep that group motivated in the highs and lows. I mean, how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's challenging, but I think it's about refreshing things. So it can become quite monotonous as you go through the season. Come at Monday, you do this Tuesday, do that Wednesday. I think it's up to us to change it up, refresh things, explore different avenues where we can. I think it's also important to keep players engaged so they feel like they get an opportunity to play a certain role in training at certain moments. So it's constantly switching things as much as we can when required, by the way, because I think sometimes the structure is really good, but you get a sense, don't you, when maybe the environment or the group are starting to just drop a little bit. What then do we need to do? So I don't know, it might be yoga, it might be we go off site, it might be we completely flip the day on its head. So instead of coming in and having training in the morning, we'll have it in the afternoon and just do it a bit differently. So, and I think that's where I'm quite chilled in terms of going, right, let's change it. Let's explore, let's do something different. I don't mind taking that risk, but it has to be with reason. And I think there's a really good piece around, we get too familiar sometimes with the environment we're in, the process that we're taking, and we've got to flip it on its head sometimes.
And you just mentioned before about the team around you. Who, over the course of your career, who are the leaders that you looked up to and been inspired by, and what sort of qualities did they have that made you think, yeah, that's someone I can aspire to be like, or someone who I can really who really motivates me? And what have you taken then from them and into your own career as a leader?
Yeah, probably different elements. When I was playing, I had a coach that was incredibly good on the grass. Great tactician, made me look decent as a player, by the way. Not telling you I was average, and I was curious, and he was always very good at manipulating the practice and keeping individuals engaged. I guess more towards the leadership side, I'd look to the likes of Hope, where I've worked with her for 6 years. Probably more in the sense of the way that she was able to scale big projects back with individual players and with staff, and go and really layer in the detail and be that almost that patient side in, right, what does it take? Yeah, it looks like that, and how are we going to get there? That was really good. And not only that, the way that she was incredibly consistent with her values, what it meant for her, and portraying that to the players and the staff, and what she expected. It was very clear, very consistent. There'll probably be the key people. There's been other people that have been in and around, but probably not for as long a period as those.
Obviously, Hope Powell's had an incredible career and has a wonderful CV, and you have her support, of course. But there must be immense pressure that comes with your role. How do you manage that? How do you handle that pressure?
Yeah, I think firstly, in the type of role that we are in leadership roles, and particularly in elite environments, there's always going to be pressure and expectation. I think it's a privilege to have that. And that's something that I will never take for granted in any role within football, because I appreciate how many other people are fighting to get in this position. I think with that in hand, the way that I deal with it is I go, right, every day, what's the priority? What do we need to do? And I'm very, I guess, diligent in the way that I approach things. I think the devil is in detail, it's what you do every day. So it's all well and good going, this is our ambition to get back there. And we can say that about Birmingham, right? Our ambition is to get back to the top of the women's game. Okay, well then our actions every day need to align to that. We can't cut corners. That's the bit.
Yeah. And do you try and instill, and obviously Birmingham City is a massive club with a number of different teams, but do you try and instill that through every department, every area, within the training ground or wherever it might be? Is everyone, how many people do you have to sort of influence to make sure that everyone's going towards that same goal?
Yeah, certainly in terms of feeding into the first team, all of the disciplines, my role is to bring that together, make sure it's integrated. So it's really important that for example, the physical department know exactly how we play, so that the work that they do intertwines with that and it complements that. But as well as that, we have the youth pathway here. So they need to know what we're looking at so that they know how to get there. We have to integrate it all, absolutely, yeah. And that comes down to what you were saying originally about the clarity, the communication, bringing it all together. So there's a large number of people here that we have to consistently check in with, come together, open the door, everything.
And I know that the club, I can't remember when, but obviously had new ownership, and I know they're very ambitious to. There's talk of a new ground being built, and obviously the men's first team got relegated last season, so that they've got a different battle there. But do you feel the pressure from that outside noise? Are you aware of what's going on as the club as a whole, and does that sort of feed into the way you work, or do you just have to drown that out and focus on your challenge with the ladies team?
Completely aware of the ambition of the owners, and for me that's what part of the reason why I'm sitting here, because their enthusiasm in the whole club and the women's team in being a strong part of that was so enticing. And that is exactly the direction, how quickly we're moving is amazing. The current stadium has gone through a whole redevelopment. I'm sitting in completely refurbished offices that we've had made just for us, women and girls department. Yeah. Got a brand new gym down the corridor. So, yeah, of course, there's expectation. Certainly, it drives me, if I'm really honest. It drives me to do my job well every single day, because I recognise the importance of and the impact of that on not only our team, the players, but the club, the city, the ownership. And that's part of the role, but it does drive me. But it's important that I have to focus on every day walking in the building, right? What's the priority? What needs to be done? So very much process.
It strikes me another similarity. I always say in theatre that the highs are high and the lows are lows. Certainly from my time as an actor, that you could be in one job in the West End, and then 12 months later you're mopping up, beer in a bar, waiting for your next job to come along. And so the challenges are extremely difficult. And I think it's the same in football. We witness the highs and lows every week and over the course of a season. But what are you finding the most rewarding part at the moment of working at Birmingham?
I think no matter what role I've been in, and certainly this plays part into it, this role now, it's seeing people develop.
Yeah.
The moment when you see, I don't know, one of your players step foot onto the pitch to play for their senior international side for the first time, that is so rewarding. When you see the team apply the principles that you've been putting in place over a period of time and it pay off and the players feel it, that is incredibly rewarding. So certainly seeing people develop is a big part of that, staff included. I think what I love certainly about this club is I can come out of the training ground today and I now live close by, staying close by, and I'll walk in, go and get my shopping, my groceries, and everyone just wants to talk about the club and where it's going, and everyone is so excited about the prospects of taking it where everyone believes, myself included, where it deserves to be. And it is very much a hard-working club and city where we earn the right. We recognise where we are, but we're also really excited because we can see the possibility. So certainly developing people, but the moment when it comes into fruition is incredibly rewarding.
I just wanted to touch on something that just came to me, and maybe I should have picked on earlier, but you're very aware, obviously, of your body language, of the language you use. You've touched on that already. How much do you often have to work on the players with that as well? And what I mean, you're going to have different characters who are going to have to be a slightly different role when they step onto that pitch, and maybe more physical, maybe show a different side, maybe show more strength, or a captain and their communication qualities. I mean, how much do you not actually talk to them about their performance? And when I say performance, I mean from an acting point of view, or the presentational point of view, and what they're giving off as opposed to their performance on the field as a player.
Yeah, firstly, I think players have to perform it every day. But the biggest performance is the match. That is the reality of it. I think there's lots of things that you can do as a team and as an individual, which sends subtle messages to the opposition and the fans within a match. And there's negative ones as well. So a massive bugbear of mine is when, I don't know, a mistake happens and it's one of those arms go up. And I always thought when I used to play, if I was a fullback, if the winger did something and did that with their arms in the air, I was thinking, you're not, number one, I'm not sure you have in your team. What message does that send? They're not together.
Yeah.
Number two, I think I can get in your head. You're wound up.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing, what messages are we sending? The moment a goal is conceded, what is it? Do we pick up the ball and do we jog with it back to the centre spot? That sends a huge message.
Yeah.
But then there's also times where it might be actually the message is different. We want to slow it down, and there's lots of different elements, and I think we can become guilty of, I guess, ignoring that sometimes. Plays a massive part. And even on the benches, when you're getting the substitutes ready, I always think, like, if we look like we're going through tons of sheets of paper and rushing and we're chaotic, well, what message is that sending to them? So there's so many things, Chris. I could make a substitute. The opposition head coach makes a substitute straight away. I'm thinking, is that because of me, or was that planned? Or there's so many. So the body language, but also the cues, I guess, the moments.
And what about your body language? Are you really aware of it on the touchline? I remember reading something once about, I think, I've forgotten his name, the old Leicester manager, Celtic manager.
Brendan Rodgers?
Brendan Rodgers had said that his dad's physicality when he was a player, when Brendan was a player, he'd look across and everything about his dad's physicality watching instilled fear in Brendan, because he's,
right.
The whole body language was angry and was, looked disappointed. And And Brendan said, he sort of played with fear, and he made that one of his missions, to not be giving off that sort of vibe to his players when they look across. He doesn't want to see that. How conscious are you of that? And do you have to have you found that that's in your body anyway, or you have to remind yourself of what you're giving off through your body language during a match?
Yeah, I think I'm not perfect at it still. I think there's moments where we get pulled into the emotion of the game naturally. But I think that's understanding and recognising your flaws and who you have to potentially pull yourself back. I've worked with a lot of coaches now. So I've been able to sit in the dugout, emotion removed, and watch and potentially see the impact. So I'm very aware of it. I try and stay quite still and composed, but I'm also quite a dynamic and energetic individual, and I will never change the passion and the enthusiasm. I
think that's important, though, isn't it? I think they need to see that. I talk about that with Les Mis as well. How can I expect a cast to be passionate about production if they don't sense that I am? So it's really important to be aware of that when you're delivering.
100%, yeah. And I think on the flip side, I've seen coaches get up and throw notebooks down. Now, that's a part of performing. They might be doing it for a reaction, but as we know, players are watching. You see players do something within a pitch and they will look at the sideline and see what's the reaction. So personally, it's not my style to do that, but I'm certainly very passionate and energetic and encouraging.
But I think people are more emotionally aware now, aren't they, of what the needs of players or people or their staff are, and that where someone is going to need something explained to them, someone's going to need it visually, someone's going to be intimidated by that sort of behaviour, someone's not. And unless you're fully aware of whether it's going to have the desired effect on all of them, then it's a risk, surely.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree.
What about your captain? What sort of leadership qualities are you expecting from them? What sort of communicator? How did you pick that person?
Yeah, well, it's still going, at the moment, there's already a team captain here and a club captain. I think it's really important to me, number one, that we strive to have all the players that become leaders. And one of my core values is to act first. I really want people to be able to, I guess, bring themselves in meetings and have a voice. And I think if we rely on just one or two people for that, then, it's certainly not what I'm striving for. So, but the captain is critical because the captain is the bridge between the players and the staff. But also they are there in all the moments that we will not see. So they've got to be able to completely understand what we're striving for, be aligned to the values that we want to achieve, the environment that we're trying to create, because I think they become critical in not monitoring, but working with the rest of the group around, right, okay, do we really want to do it like that? Because if we do, that's the impact, because we cannot just drive it as staff. And actually, I think in today's world, peer-to-peer is way more impactful than me going, we should think about this. Players are more inclined to listen to each other and their points of view than they are to someone else, i.e. the staff, a lot of the time. Yeah.
You mentioned a minute ago when we were talking about body language, just about what you give off to the fans, and I always find that fascinating. Old Trafford, the theatre of dreams, and the title there obviously lends itself to what we do. And there's that performance. You expect a good performance for the players, but also for the fans. And sometimes is there that sort of challenge that you've got to be more entertaining? You've got to entertain the fans. Where's the line drawn between, well, we get a result here or we entertain? And is there a pressure on you for that as well?
Yeah, I mean, in the senior game we're here, it is a results-based industry. Yep. It is. For me, I'd like to showcase performance on the pitch that the fans can relate to and they can identify, week in, week out, they can see a trend. In terms of, I guess, the acting up to the fans, that's not me in that side of things. I think that's down to the players, to infuse them. I think the more that the players see the passion on the pitch in terms of the demonstration of the hard working elements that they want to see, or, you know, even the big challenges or the celebration from the goal, the fans feed off of it. We have to give them a reason to be behind us, in my opinion. But certainly I know Jose Mourinho was big on it, but we've got too much other things to focus on at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But we know they're behind us, and we certainly, for me, it's more about after the game, spending time with them where I can, and even before the game when you turn up. We had also a sponsorship lunch on my first week, which was really nice, because we had the opportunity to go and sit and have lunch with them and get round, and certainly for me that was really important. So we want to be close to them, and that is something that in women's football we've always had. I think it's important we don't lose it.
You speak so well, Amy, and you're obviously doing extremely well in your career. What advice could you offer to other young women who are aspiring to get leadership roles within sport?
I guess my first advice would be to, where you can, and I was very fortunate because I was in a role and the likes of Hope Powell walked in the door and decided she wanted to keep me as staff. And I'm very fortunate for that. I think the more that we can create these groups where women can connect, where they can see people in roles and how it works and have an opportunity to share some of the struggles that they're having, I think that helps. So try and get in touch with some of the county FAs with the groups that they're running, or some of the charities that are going on and the projects that are going on. I think that helps. That's certainly something I didn't have. And if I didn't have the likes of working with Hope, then maybe I wouldn't be here today, because you need to be able to see that it's possible.
I think sometimes we are guilty of saying that we're lucky, or we're fortunate, as you just did, and sometimes that we have to also acknowledge that that we're skilled at what we do, and that, I think, is certainly the case with you. If you could leave us maybe with one, the best life advice that you've been given, anything that comes to mind that you'd like just to, as a parting gift to us and all aspiring sort of leaders out there in the world of sport and business in general, anything that springs to mind?
That's a tough question. I think I've obviously touched on a few things here. One of the best things, I can't even remember who said it to me. It might have been my mum, I don't know.
It often is, isn't it?
I think because I was very much like determined I'm going to give it a go. And I've always been like that with anything that I approach. But someone said to me, it might have been my mum, I'll say it's my mum anyway, it made me feel better about it. But she said, there's no one that's going to just constantly keep saying they believe in you. There's no one that's going to sit on your shoulder every day and give you a pat on the back and go, keep going. They're not going to do that. So you have to, at some point, just believe in yourself and have a go, and be comfortable that, you know what, like, I still make mistakes. That's okay. And I will try and learn as well as I can from each of those moments and improve. That's all we can do. But I think it's just the thought around, well, actually, there's no one that has to believe in you. You've got to believe in yourself and be yourself.
It's very true. And there's, we didn't get the chance to discuss imposter syndrome. I'm not sure whether you've ever felt yourself in that situation or not, but certainly believing in yourself and knowing that you have the capabilities to succeed will take you a long way.
Yep.
Amy, I wish you all the best for the forthcoming season, and maybe I will put my allegiances to one side and pop along and watch a game at Birmingham City.
Yeah, please do. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.